I made a video where I talked about someone who'd set up several channels and spent many years originally being what I called a shill in the description, where they sold things on their channels, and then 1 year after not doing anything for a while, and it looks like, or they deleted the videos they had, they decided to switch gears and appeal to ignorance by doing videos about flat Earth, and at one point Disney is infecting minds of your children and all sorts of crazy shit, I'm sure. But it settled on flat Earth as far as this person being famous or even paid attention to. And the person created their own terminology, their own buzzword, their own cliche, and called it R value. And it isn't dealing with Pink Panther insulation in your walls. It's dealing with the diameter of the Earth and the radius of the Earth, and that would be the R value the person was deciding to discuss. Now, the specialized wording, instead of setting Earth's radius, is an example of making it all about them and making sure they get search engine ranking. I'm sorry, but that's it. It's not the R value. It's just the radius of the Earth. And the complaints and comments I saw concerning the video, and what little text I saw the person ever type up on the net and in the description, basically boiled down to this, that why isn't there a accurate or precise or whatever number for the radius of the Earth? And I did a video about the radius of the Earth and why this kind of an argument makes sense and why it doesn't make sense. And thumbnail sketch. You can model the Earth like you would in a video game, the following procedure. The generalized diameter of the Earth, draw it as a sphere. Then you would use a mutation of that by altering its geometry, let's say north to south and east to west, by saying it's wider at the equator. Then the next layer of not being wrong but escalating levels of precision is you would make the bottom of the Earth from this particular point down to here bulge out a specific percentage to approximate the rest of the shape of the Earth. Then you would create, if you want to, a procedurally generated Earth that's actually been done, or just a map of the shape of the Earth with an overlay of where the continents are, mountain ranges, everything like that, and get it close. And that would give you an approximation of the Earth that would be visually very, very appealing. You could even put a color map over the top of it. I've done this, by the way. That's where I'm using this for a reference point. And the equations also could include things like the generalized orbits of the planets going around the sun, if you're doing a space game. Many of the planets are gas giants, or are completely smooth, so you can just draw them as diameters and just use that number at a distance. And you can even algorithmically generate how far they are away by doubling or halving or something. And then make them orbit and then place them at a specific point for a specific epoch, like whenever you made your video game, so it'd be accurate, and then mathematically move them around the thing like a Tinker Toy version of reality, and make a reasonably good emulation of what you're seeing now. They're very good programs for showing you this kind of model of our solar system available, like a stellarium and that sort of thing, and you can play with them. And they go one step further. They then take each of these layers of precision, where it looks really, really good, and really correct for it. The one that's used for Google Earth and also for your cell phone may include a generalized set of numbers to figure out heights and altitudes that are precise only for cities, the generalized altitudes for them, and drawing things a lot more precisely. You can keep adding more data, or you can just do it for the local area you're in. Now, one of the ways of doing this, so that it will be accurate to your current situation, is finding out where you are as far as GPS numbers, and then taking advantage of the fact that you, on ground level, or up to 100 feet, have a limit how far away you can see. And also how far away it should bother rendering anything may only be 20 or 30 feet, because it really just needs accuracy of your altitude on that street, maybe. So you end up with this being a limit, view limit, level of detail, LOD, while sitting on the Earth, of, let's say, 12 miles away if you're almost 100 feet up, and 3 miles away if you're at eye level. And that is not a random number. 100 feet above the standard generalized number is about as high as you're going to find any overpass or any height that's not going to obscure the horizon, depending on heights. And you can find this out by just looking at the fact that city planners do that. Now, San Francisco, all bets are off. But you can do this mathematical generalization and it'll work really well. And you can even make it really precise by doing a flat drawn map of the streets and then mathematically just ignore the buildings. You just say when the borders of the buildings happen, or just the borders of the roads. When I did a video game, I would do that. Make my roads, let's say 50 feet wide with sidewalks, and then I would chop in the road bed and then put a slight curve on it to make it mathematically accurate. And it's a generalized road bed and a generalized street you find in most cities, because those are the standards of the time, let's say. And you can create incredible level of detail. But if you go out with a augmented reality heads-up display and see if it matches anything, number one, it won't. Number two, it'll be the wrong altitude by 10 to 100 feet. And the next thing is, it doesn't matter. If you map the shape of the Earth as being completely spherical, it doesn't make a difference. If you map it as being slightly egg-shaped, which is much more accurate, it doesn't make a difference. If you make the dimensions for the equator and polar coordinates perfect, it doesn't matter. You can make a completely flat map of the Earth for a trip going from one half of the Earth all the way around to the back side of it, as long as you don't deviate. The minute you go off course, or decide to do one of the other seemingly straight pathways, because this sphere you can draw lots of straight lines that go very different pathways. Once you deviate, you can no longer map it as a simple 2D or flat Earth model. It won't work unless you always take the same route and never get blown off course. If you're in an airplane or in the sea, never get pushed off course by currents or weather. And that's kind of the problem that you run into. Unless it causes you a lot of financial or physical hardship or death, it doesn't matter if you map the Earth as just a flat surface, a generalized perfect sphere, a compensated sphere to where you get the average altitudes for where sea level is accurate. Yes, that varies by plus or minus 5 miles too. And it won't matter even if you get it accurate for the depths of the ocean or the height of mountains, because all you do is always fly your airplane higher than the mountains, and since if you're in a boat, you don't have to worry about the mountains. You can't take your boat up a mountain. And the bottom of the sea isn't relevant because you aren't a sub. And even if you are, you don't usually go to the bottom of the ocean. You just worry about where the coastlines are. If you're a submarine, what's your maximum depth? Draw the edges of all the continents or whatever to that edge. So now it's a just bigger land area and smaller ocean. We generalize things to what's practical. So when someone decides to go into the subject matter of the literal shape of the Earth, the literal size of it, whether it's round or flat, even that basic concept, it doesn't matter. Now that's 8 minutes explaining why it doesn't matter if the Earth is round or flat. People like arguing this stuff because it doesn't matter. It isn't going to kill you or make you better off knowing the Earth is round or flat or being able to prove it. It is a dreadfully painful process, taking months in some cases, to explain literally the entirety of our solar system. It can be done in 3 years. If you're not aware of it, it takes a single individual with minimal resources, like literally a horseback ride, around 3 years to completely confirm what we already know by looking it up in a book, how big the solar system is, where the planets are, and the size of the planet, and basic shape of it. And it takes that longer or shorter, depending on how you do it, using primitive methodologies of, I'm using a horse because I don't want to walk, or a bicycle. And that's it. I mean, but what have you accomplished? It doesn't change whether or not you get to work on time, or whether you eat or drink. It's not relevant. And that's why people make this into a hobby where they just, because it's totally safe to bullshit about reality at this point, they just say the Earth isn't round. They say it's smaller or larger than it is. They say there's forbidden knowledge. And it's a very good activity. It gives you something to do, to fuck with people sometimes. It's a great way to troll people who think this is very important. And again, I'm going to say this. If you think the Earth being round or flat is an important subject, arguing it's round is also not really important either. Now, where it gets important is the following. If I'm working at a company and we're trying to make GPS equipment and you're a flat earther, I am able legally to say I'm not letting you work on projects because you don't believe in the Earth being round, so you can't work on the project. Even though you can sit in your head and say, I'm going to separate my belief system because the Earth can't be round and make a system that works in a round Earth. I'm not going to let you work on it because you have a conflict of interest. I'm going to say something that will piss people off. If I'm working at a place that counsels people who have become victims of and need therapy for being victims of domestic dispute, I cannot hire any feminists that believe the following: men are bad. I have actually worked at a counseling place, and I'm personally a victim of domestic violence and domestic abuse repeatedly in my life. And one thing I had to explain to people is, if you have a bias against men, you're the abuser. You can't be here. Well, no, there isn't any well. You cannot come into the room with the baggage that you believe one gender, sex, or orientation, or identity is better than the other or worse than the other. You are not permitted in the building. This is a safe space for people who are trying to get away from this shit. 90% of the domestic abuse has nothing to do with their gender. They're just beating up on them because there's someone they can beat up on. Most domestic abusers are like child molesters. They don't care. They're just looking for someone to have power over. But part of it, even if it's not really what the abuser is about abusing people based on gender. At least that's what they're told. And that can't be allowed in the room. And no, if I'm running an outreach place, taking care of victims of abuse, and you come in with a I hate men attitude of any kind, or women, you can't be there for the same fucking reason. You're the problem. One of many. It can't be there even subconsciously. And I have to exclude myself after I had a breakup because I was emotionally triggered by just anything. Couldn't help anybody because I'm a victim of abuse, and I can't help people who are victims of abuse if it just happened to me. That's something you learn too. If you're a victim of abuse, sometimes you can't help others because you have a bias. You'll taint the thing. You'll mess it up. You'll misdirect them. You make it worse. And until you realize that your own biases can destroy another person by accident, even though you're trying to do the best thing possible, until you realize that, you're useless and you have to go. I can't have you making navigation charts to make sure that people get from New York to Germany or Switzerland or whatever if you truly don't believe Switzerland exists. I can't have you doing that because you won't care if you kill somebody by misdirecting them and they end up in the ocean and dying from lack of fuel in the airplane. You cannot do that. You can't be a navigator aboard an aircraft or aboard a ship if you don't believe the earth is round. It's a very basic principle. It's too damn basic. There are people out there who do not believe, or at least say they don't believe, that nuclear power exists or that atom bombs work. I'm not going to let them handle any safety or any function in a nuclear plant, or even working with radioactive material that's used in a medical setting or in a test setting acting as X-ray equipment, because they don't believe it's radioactive. They don't believe it's dangerous. You can't touch that. A person who believes that all guns are evil cannot be hired to do analysis of guns because their bias is going to affect what they think of the gun. They're going to attribute a bunch of shit to it that's not relevant. If I'm having you do ballistics, you cannot do that. I can't have biases that are irrational when we're doing work that has a productive output. I take a meter and test things. I don't believe the meter's accurate. I test it before I do it, once a week or once a day, depending how badly we have to get everything perfect. A person who believes a meter can never be wrong or a meter can never be right is worthless. They're never going to take the test seriously because they don't think there's any point. If a person is completely nihilistic about life and doesn't give a shit if people live or die, I don't want them resuscitating somebody. If your beliefs are strong enough that you're willing to go on the net and deny the fact that the earth is round, that's fine. But that means you're not allowed to make any globes, and you sure as fuck aren't allowed to help anybody figure out if their GPS is aligned correctly because you don't believe in GPS satellites or something. I can't have you do things that might cost someone's life because you have a bias that's conflicting with reality, and that's the end of the discussion. And this is not something we ever do anymore to people. We don't tell them, you're too stupid, too arrogant, or too pig-headed to be safe. This is not about the comments that were left on my channel today about flat earth or anything. This is a general response to everybody. Why do I fight misinformation and lies? Because it gets people killed. And it has done that over the last year or so. And we've gotten damn lucky it wasn't worse. Two or three DNA changes, and we would all be dead. And you fucking know it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with everything.